Bret the Hitman Hart. Make sure you watch the Wrestling Roundtable.
Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. Join us on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Support the show by going to the Amazon store. Anything that is available on Amazon.com you can get through our store, and we get a cut of it. Changing up the panel a little bit, rejoining us to my left, which is your right, Grizzly Redwood, fan of 15 years, but he's been wrestling 6.5, and Orlando O'Neal to my right, which is your left. Ali is a fan of 21 years, and I definitely wanted to bring you on to talk about Babyfaces, because what else could you really be? I mean, we have seen some guys take the smaller dynamic, like we mentioned Shawn Michaels on the last show, and turned it into, I'm a little sneaky Weasley shit, like Owen Hart did in 94, so the heat can go on the bigger guy beating up the smaller guy, but that's generally not what you do. No. Generally, you're a babyface pretty much everywhere you go, so you're the first person to ask then, what makes a good babyface and what doesn't?
There's a lot to make a good babyface. It's not just one particular thing. Like, to be a good heel, you really just got to have a good job of getting under people's skins. You need to be that guy that people want to see kick this heel's ass. And that's not always an easy thing to do. You need to be able to get quality sympathy when you're getting beat down, put on you. Entertain the fans in all different aspects. On the mic, you need to be able to draw them in and suck them into what you're saying and really make them believe you're there for them.
Kind of like there's a lot of guys who come out as baby faces, yeah, baby, and high-fiving stuff, and there's really not much else there. So what do you think makes a good baby face and what doesn't?
Not only have to get people's sympathy, you have to get their respect. And you have to be able to, like Bret Hart said in the documentary, you have to be able to work with a great heel. I think that really makes a part of it. And you don't want to be too much of a babyface to the point where you're kissing the fans' ass, to the point where, like, the John Cena effect, where they're going to start to reject you and turn you heel. It's going to be detrimental to your character, and unless you're a good heel and turn around like The Rock, you're pretty much going to be fucked. You really just have to be able to entertain the crowd, get them behind you, and make them believe they want you to win.
Believe is a key word, I think. Right. Sincerity has to be there. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And also to go along with the sympathy part, I think you have to be a really good seller in order to be a good babyface. Think of some of the great babyfaces of all time. Ricky Steamboat was one of the best sellers of all time. He was able to get that sympathy from the crowd because he's always getting his ass whooped. It makes the comeback a lot more hotter and it makes the match a lot better.
Charismatic, too. You have to be charismatic. You don't have to be over the top rope, but like some of the great faces like Hogan, Hart, Michaels, they all had charisma, but it was a charisma that you admired.
And they could all sell, too.
Yeah.
Except when Vader's powerbombing you, apparently. But aside from that moment, Hogan would get beat up for most of the matches, too, and then make the big comeback, just like Macho Man, too. But when we get to some examples of some of the worst faces, I think of some disingenuous things, let's say. Like I have said on the show many times, I never bought, even as a kid, when Lex Luger 1 week is a narcissist and then the next week he's red, white, and blue, like essentially the new Hogan.
I liked it.
Well, why? What made you differentiate from me here?
This is the fact that he was able to buy the Samuel Yokozuna. That was good. I don't know, maybe I bought into the Lex Express and the whole campaign and everyone buying into him. His face, it's at least his first face match with Yokozuna. I'm a fan of like the big match atmosphere. And to me, that SummerSlam, it created a big match, almost like a Mike Tyson-esque atmosphere to me.
See, that's exactly why I didn't buy it. Because to me, the guy who was red, white, and blue body slamming the fat guys was Hulk Hogan. So immediately I just felt like they were trying to recreate that, and I did not buy it, especially in the way they did. Maybe they could have figured out a more genuine way than he just shows up for the challenge, and I don't like foreigners.
Yeah. Well, also for bad heels and baby faces, no crowd reaction. Or be very cheesy. Chris Jericho's first run in WCW as a babyface.
Come on, baby!
And he'll go down the entrance ramp and then put his back against the guardrail. And the fans will just be looking at him and he's looking for all this praise from the crowd. The crowds weren't interested in him because he's too cheesy.
Another thing that really makes a quality babyface is excitement. You have to excite people. Like Lex Luger, you watch his matches, is he really going to excite you that much?
In 97 on Nitro he did.
Yeah.
One.
But you got to be able to excite people. You got to have this extra little energy in you that the crowd can feed off of and get behind, and then they get extra excited, and you can feed off them, and it just grows and expands, and that's how you get everybody in, and you draw them in and get them excited.
What do you think were some of the worst faces then?
To modernize it in Ring of Honor, Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin. Awful. Awful.
Why is that?
They're not exciting, they're slow, and they just try too hard to be babyfaces. And the guys who have done as much as them and been everywhere that they've been, you'd figure to be able to do a little better than that. But no, they're not quality baby faces.
Well, speaking of Ring of Honor, one of the ones I never bought, speaking of authenticity, was Necro Butcher. And I really liked Necro Butcher. But I don't want to hear about him going to college and graduating and getting smart and talking, no less. I think he should be in the woods killing children and wearing their skin. I don't want to hear about Necro Butcher. I'm doing this for my family. Come on.
I understand that view completely.
Even though he was only in wrestling a short time, he still had a major WrestleMania match, part of 24/7, the Money Team, Money Mayweather, 24/7. This is it. You know I'm flashy. I got the money.
Could you even tell if he was a babyface though?
I mean, his moment at No Way Out with the Big Show,
Was
that was
awesome,
a great
yeah.
moment. But after that, because he's just naturally cocky, naturally arrogant, I mean, the people started to turn, and then I was like, wait, now we have to cheer for this huge guy who has wrestling experience against a guy who's like 5'7".
And a dick.
And a dick,
Yeah.
exactly. But it doesn't prove that him as a face does not work at all.
I loved it.
didn't.
I was cheering for him the whole time.
Well, Randy Orton's face turn was mentioned before, and what really didn't work was they changed the dynamic. This is 2004. Now he's over, but it took a long time to rebuild from the damage that Triple H did in 2004. He was getting over as the legend killer, and people were cheering the heel. So they decided to turn him face, but in doing so, they changed everything about the character that people liked in the first place. From the brash, kick you in the face, spit in your face, beat you down, and win and keep the Intercontinental title heel, now all of a sudden he's popping out of birthday cakes and throwing a punch and running away and losing, no less. And it wasn't like Evolution.
Pick
Like,
up the momentum,
it's not like he left the group on his own. He didn't want to leave. It's just Triple H was like, fuck him. He's got the title now.
Yeah, Buff Bagwell. Any time that he was a face, I hated Buff Bagwell as a face. Even after he came back from his broken neck, you'd think, okay, maybe he'd be able to get the sympathy from the crowd. But he was,
They could have.
He
could
could've,
have.
yeah,
When
he
he
could've.
came out in the wheelchair at
Yeah.
that Georgia Dome Nitro, the ovation was insane.
He could've.
They were on the cusp. You could hear the money. And that was natural. That was something that didn't happen on purpose. They could have capitalized on that, but nope, he's
But-
in the NWO.
Exactly, and he was still doing his cocky shtick, which it worked for him, but you can't be that cocky guy and be a babyface and get the sympathy from a broken neck. One gotta give.
Christian was someone I never bought as a babyface because I thought he was such a good heel too. And I know later on when he's Edge's little buddy and Edge has to retire, people like that, and they were very upset when he lost the belt so quickly to Randy Orton. But I think a Christian is a good upper mid-card heel sort of guy. When he was with Trish, when they did that
Yeah.
angle with Chris Jericho and Trish, the Cruel Intentions angle as I like to call it, he got Trish, who turned into a real bitch. He's got the bodyguard because he's a smaller guy with Tomko. It was kind of the Michaels Diesel sort of thing. I thought that was really good, but as a babyface, especially in TNA, I just did not buy that. Hopefully you've bought some of our answers because we're going to talk about some more of the best babyfaces when we come back.
How's my lights?
Face babies?
Face babies.
Face babies. I wanted to mention Smiling Brock.
Oh my god. Yes.
Oh my God.
That was probably the best example of the worst face. The best. I mean, you like your theory of a big man who turned into like goofy like dance machines is like on point, but with Brock, it's
When I saw him in Angle backstage eating milk and cookies, I knew it was over. What the fuck are they thinking?
they weren't.
Yeah. I want you to bury yourself some more.
I will.
I'll take some stairs next to the
No, I think I'm one of the best baby faces really of all time.
Best baby.
By
I don't
about
think
this
I
much
even need to
over
write
Steve.
anything down.
Me, Hogan, Steamboat, yeah.
Hey, this is the Necro Butcher from the movie The Wrestler, and you're watching the Wrestling Roundtable.
Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. Join us on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Sign up for the message board and lots more, including the links to all our social networking sites. YouTube, where you're probably watching us, but if you're not, it's on Go Fight Live. We are there too. We're also on Blog Talk Radio and iTunes, where you have our entire archive, over 100 shows for you to listen to. You can also call the radio show, like I encouraged earlier, 347-857-4647, because we've covered a lot of ground. There's a lot more to cover and a lot more to say. We'll expand there on the shows, but also 2 Facebook groups and Twitter. So all that's on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Rejoining the panel is Will Effin Brooks, and we're going to move on to the best baby faces. But before we do, We talked earlier on another show about how wrestling is a business. You hear that all the time. Business, business, business. Well, if it is a business, isn't the whole point to draw money? I asked earlier if a heel is making money, does it really matter? The baby faces, though, I mean, Cena, you mentioned during the break, and John Cena is supposed to be a babyface. Getting a heel reaction still sells merchandise to kids and women and everything. So is it kind of just more my own personal bias where, like, I thought DX in 2006 was absolute shit, but it got cheers, it sold. Wolfpack, same thing. The whole idea was just to sell shirts, essentially. So is that the real measure of a good babyface? Drawing, selling tickets, selling pay-per-views?
And merchandising, yes. That's what you want your face, like the face of your company to do. You want him to be the money machine. Like you said, like Cena, like Hogan, Dusty, Flair were in the 80s. You want him to make money. Make people want to see them wrestle.
You could say that for your top babyface because you want him to be very advertiser friendly. I don't think as many people hate John Cena because people will still pay to see him, and proof of that was his return at the Royal Rumble in 2008.
Yep.
Everyone fucking cheered. They're like, "Oh my God, it's him!" And they're like, "Wait a minute, no, oh yeah, I'm booing him."
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I fucking went apeshit at Hooters with you. For some baby faces,
That was
I guess,
before the pay-per-view, too.
Yes, it's a business. The nature of pro wrestling is to make money. That is the bottom line goal of any job, is to make money. Whether it's drawing ability of a baby face to bring in all your merchandise and get asses in the seats, or your drawing ability of a heel to get people to come and watch them get their ass kicked. It all comes down to making money. John Cena, a great babyface in that he fills the seats up, he fills arenas up, and he sells merchandise to women and children. And then you put him against The Rock, or you put him against Brock Lesnar, who the other half that are booing John Cena now have more merchandise to buy just to boo him.
Right. Well, I mean, there's different tiers of babyface, though, because there are, when you go to a show, some guys who get the recognition pop, like if you go to a WWE show, oh, it's the first name I know, or a local guy when they make up the hometown that they're in for whoever it might be, just because it happens to be wherever they are. But there are other baby faces, like I never really felt, let's say, the APA. They were over, but I don't think they were ever draws necessarily. Like,
I don't think they were never put.
They didn't get you in the door, but while you were there, you still cheered them.
Exactly. There are baby faces that are very comforting to the fans, and like they're not meant to draw. Like someone like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, he was a great face. I mean, Bushwhack, I hated the Bushwhackers personally, but people still like him. People got a kick out of him. They sold some shirts, but as far as like the draw point, they had their own separate section of faces who are meant to draw people, and they're meant to draw advertisers. They're meant to really fill up seats, and they have heels to work their way up to face those baby faces. I think that's is the difference.
And something that was mentioned earlier when we were talking about heels and how essentially they're only as good as the heel they're going against, I thought of immediately, and we're going to move on to some of the best moments. When that was mentioned, I thought of immediately Slamboree 98. For months, Chris Jericho, who had kicked Dean Malenko out of WCW and was riding him the whole time he was on his cruiserweight streak as the champion. Stinko Malenko every week, making fun of his dad. Every week, Malenko wasn't even on TV, never saw him, no satellite comments or anything like that. Malenko was just silent outside the company, off camera. Jericho carried that whole feud to the point where they had the Cruiserweight Battle Royal, winner gets a title shot, and Ciclope, just some jobber luchador, okay, he wins. Juventud, of course, in collusion with Malenko, knew about it, threw himself over, but we didn't know that yet, because then the reveal, and one of the biggest pops in 1998, and not just WCW, I think in all of wrestling, and this is the year of Austin on the other channel, Goldberg on that channel too. Malenko had got so much sympathy because of Chris Jericho that he took off that mask. The crowd cheered bigger than anything in that whole show. And then, of course, he goes on to win the title. It looked kind of goofy when he was wearing the Ciclope outfit, but those are some of the details WWF would have done a little better. But point is, Malenko had that moment, and it was a huge surprise. Great payoff. What were some of your favorite babyface moments?
When Goldberg beat Hogan for the title in '98, I thought it was just so big because Hogan had the title for so long, and here you have this guy, again, great babyface, but he didn't need the mic skills. He was a dominant babyface. That was something different. This is like the catchphrase, selling t-shirt area, and here's a guy who's just big, strong, and dominant.
Never said a word.
Never said a word. That's all you needed, and here he is. They finally have the match with Hogan, and in the Georgia Dome, beats Hogan clean, and it was just a great moment for that generation.
I think there are going to be a lot of babyface moments that are titles being won because that's the big goal. That's the payoff. And whether it's Mick Foley finally achieving his childhood dream clean or not, that's not the point. Foley got that when he was never, quote, supposed to. But speaking of WCW, I also think of Ron Simmons in 1992 winning the title from Vader. Vader was a fucking force back then, too. He should have been mentioned in some of the heels that we talked about before, but he was a force, a monster. And it happened with WCW having Ron Simmons go in to win the title with the Power Slam. Whether it's politically motivated from Bill Watts or whatever the fucking reason people say about, that doesn't take away from the moment at all. Because when they cut to black kids in the crowd crying because the first black world champion was crowned, that was genuine. That meant a lot.
Every time Sting came in and beat up the NWO, it always seemed like every time the NWO was getting over on the WCW, sucks to be you guys, here comes Sting from the Raptors with his aluminum bat and evens the odds. Every single time. Whether it was at pay-per-views, Nitro, it was always huge pop. And he got more over, like you said, more over doing that than anything he did before with Flair or anybody else.
And that went on for, what, a year and a half or just about, where this is building and building and building. And there did so many times where Hogan and NWO were afraid on the outside, creating that fear of what the babyface Sting had in store for them in terms of vengeance.
Virgil finally turning on DiBiase in Royal Rumble 91. I mean, you're talking about soaking up the moment, like just with his eyes, are just insane.
I honestly loved watching Kurt Angle get his little undefeated streak broken after he first showed up.
With Taz at the Rumble 2000.
I thought it was great. You had to hate Kurt Angle. There was no way not to. He was just clean cut and preaching about,
overbearing.
He was just way too much to deal with.
And he just cut that promo about how much he said this Nick sucks. I'm going to be your champion tonight in New York.
I'm not worried about it. I hate New York. So it's all
well,
right.
Still, it's just adding a little more fuel to the fire just before he gets his ass
kicked. And then I loved watching Taz come out and beating him, and then afterwards...
That was a great Taz moment, too.
Yeah. And then afterwards, Kurt Angle gets, it wasn't a real win. It was an illegal move. I loved it.
Because they did essentially the Rocky Maivia effect on purpose.
Yeah.
And it worked with the overbearing, obnoxious, three eyes American Olympic winner with Kurt Angle. But there's a couple WrestleMania moments I wanted to say before we move on to some of the best baby faces. And that, of course, would have to be at WrestleMania 7 when Savage and Liz reunited after the retirement match against Ultimate Warrior. Perfect. Full circle for all the characters involved. And especially, too, how Sherry looked like as soon as her meal ticket's gone, she's kicking him while he's down. He's retired. This is his whole career gone. I mean, in theory.
Right.
But then Miss Elizabeth happens to be there, and he realizes who it is. And a tearful reunion was great. But the best moment had to be, because this is the best moment in wrestling, in my opinion, when Hulk Hogan body slammed Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. This was the pinnacle of pro wrestling, in my opinion, because even though he'd been champion for a while, against the odds, the 7-foot undefeated monster, Andre the Giant, beating him up the whole match, and then Hogan gets that move in, the clothesline or whatever, knocks Andre down, and then this was like the biggest pop I ever heard. Even on tape, body slamming Andre the Giant and pinning him. This legitimized him. This was the biggest show for the WWF at the time. That, to me, is the best moment in wrestling history. But that was also with Hulk Hogan, who would definitely be one of the first names we mentioned for best baby faces. He carried the torch, the mantle for the WWF in the key times when we were kids, the rock and wrestling connection, and he was the baby face then. But how about a guy who never turned heel? Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. We mentioned it before when it came to selling. Ricky Steamboat did that better than anybody, but the thing you hear about it all the time is we couldn't turn him heel. Who's going to boo Ricky Steamboat? Even though TNA kind of flirted with it as an authority figure, I think they learned real quickly that was pretty stupid. But who were some of the best baby faces to you?
Bret Hart. Speaking of Bret, WrestleMania 10 with all the faces come and lift him up on his shoulders. Bret Hart was probably one of the best faces in this whole industry. He didn't really have to say much. He didn't have to be really fancy. He was charismatic. He had great entrance. He had great matches too. And I think that's very important being a face. I mean, if you had stinkers and no one's going to really appreciate your matches, you have to be a better wrestler than the heels, I think. Because if people hate you, they could accept you being a bad wrestler. But if you're a great wrestler, I think that's what really people are going to respect more.
Well, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
The heels are supposed to cheat. behind the ref's back, holding the ropes, everything they can, eye gouging, hair pulling every second. So, of course, we know, like, instinctively the heel is not the better wrestler. That's why he's resorting to this rule-breaking shit.
Yeah.
But with Bret Hart, were you disappointed reading his book in a way, like, knowing he's fucking every woman around the world and doing all this other stuff? Like, we didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
But I just mean in the sense that we had this image of Bret Hart as a
I don't think I was disappointed. I mean, the fact he's a pro athlete and that shit happens.
The fact he did steroids kind of was shocking to me, though.
Okay.
Because he wasn't that big.
Oh, shocking, yeah.
No, he looked a lot
90s.
bigger in 97 than he did in 94.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
but I mean, when you read Bret Hart's in a room with the Iron Sheik and wrestlers around a mound of cocaine and all these sort of things, I'm like, this is not the Bret Hart that we cheered, like we had in mind. With
I'm sure Hogan did a lot worse.
Oh, I'm sure too.
But I'm gonna say
We're seeing it now on the sex tape.
Yeah.
You're seeing it. I'm not watching that.
I'm watching frame by frame.
I'm gonna have to watch it. But I'm gonna say
How
for
come we don't
best,
plug it?
I think there was enough plugging going on in that.
I'm gonna say for best face is Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, the original People's Champion, son of a plumber, the most common man you could ever find.
Well, look at
out
him.
of shape.
Yeah.
Had a lisp. Didn't think like this guy had that athletic at all. Just be able to cut a great promo. Knew how to work the ring and knew how to work the crowd.
Especially with the promo part. He knew how to connect to people. We mentioned him when we talked about best and worst promos. I've eaten with kings and queens and slept on the streets and eaten pork and beans. Like, he made the people feel like he's been where you are, so I represent you and I know how you feel when he's going against fucking Four Horsemen type dicks.
Obviously, Ricky Steamboat's top of my list, but a great babyface right now, today, is El Generico. He's incredible. He can draw you. He's a lovable character when he comes through the curtain. Then he can wrestle, and then he can draw you in when he's getting beat up. And then he can just punch it into fifth gear and be the most exciting guy you've ever seen.
Well, instead of the fake luchador, what about the real luchadors? Because when we've covered different aspects of wrestling, like Japan or whatever, there are a couple guys that kind of like the Hogan of their day. And Hogan was really just an extension of like Bruno Sammartino type characters, where they're the top baby face making the big comeback, Chief J Strongbow style, and they carry the mantle. Well, Ricky Dozan in Japan, even though he was really Korean, but he was instrumental in Japan getting pro wrestling after World War II, and he was against all the foreign powers, Freddie Blassie and all the other guys that they would bring in. They built a whole industry on him, just like El Santo in Mexico with Lucha Libre. This is a guy who got so popular, and that's not even to say anything about his son, El Hijo del Santo, who is also a big name too. But El Santo was so popular, they've got a museum of him in Mexico. He was even buried in his mask, kind of like Bela Lugosi was buried with his Dracula cape. He was so identified with that, and he cared about the tradition so much that he was buried in his mask. And El Santo is one of the most famous names still. So who do you think was some of the best baby faces?
I don't think we could end the show without mentioning The Rock. Really not much I really have to explain to convince you guys why he was one of the best faces that wrestling has ever seen. Everything from his entrance and to when he's on the mic, he's on fire. He gets the crowd into it. He gets them chanting everything. This guy redefined what a face was.
Well, let me ask you to explain something, because when Roddy Piper has said before in the past, why am I going to tear down my opponent, because big deal then if I beat this loser? Didn't The Rock kind of do the opposite, where he put down everybody to the point where he just kind of almost made them look like goofs, like especially Billy Gunn in '99. Like, he made
it's
people.
not hard to make Billy Gunn look
Well,
like
I understand, but I just mean, like, he never really did that. I mean, a few times here and there, but it just seemed more like Rock was more concerned with himself than necessarily anybody else.
And that was part of his character. He wasn't out of character. That was part of who he was. He was demeaning. He's going to put you down. He's going to take your catchphrase. He's going to use that against you. He's going to take your tights. He's going to use it against you. He's going to take your haircut. He's going to use it against you. He's going to do things that normal baby faces don't really do.
All right, well, there's a lot more to say, but I'm sure we'll have to just expand on the website or Roundtable Radio. So share your voice and opinion wherever you're listening, whether it's the message board, YouTube, iTunes, Facebook. Let's hear your opinion too. Leave the comment. That's the idea. Interaction with you, the fans. Let's hear your voice too. You're part of the Roundtable. But right now, that's it. We're going to wrap it up. Until next time, we're going to talk about the Monday Night War and also pro wrestling cliches, some of my favorite and some of the ones I hate. And I'm sure you have an idea of what some of them are, but we'll find out. We'll find out some more in detail next time we tape. Stay up to date on WrestlingRoundtable.com. So for the panel of Rodney and Martin LeConte, Anthony Garrity, Grizzly Redwood, Shane Hagedorn, Alex Payne, Orlando O'Neill, Will Effin Brooks, I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. Thank you, and join us on WrestlingRoundtable.com.